All right, it is on the hour. We will go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Alex. I'll be your presenter today. As we're going to take a quick walk through Formative, a little beginner tutorial here, help you get your feet wet so that you can then go on today or for the rest of this week and so on to help your students with real-time student responses and help them with some long-term growth. Now, before we get started with anything, I want you guys to go to formative.com or want everyone to go to formative.com and go ahead and log in with the button in the top right. I'll give you a couple minutes to get started there. That way you can follow with us side by side as I'm going through everything today. You can kind of experience it for yourself with a little bit of extra guided help, right? And if you don't have an account already, it's perfectly fine too. You can set a free one up there in that login button, get everything squared away and good to go. Amy, thanks for the thumbs up. Appreciate it. All right, let's go ahead and keep moving along with the interest of time. First, a little bit about me. My name is Alex Chen. I'm a senior client success manager here at Formative. I've spent the last 3 years working in ed tech and educational technology, helping districts and schools really of all shapes and sizes from Ohio and Pennsylvania, all the way to the other side of the country in Arizona and California. Even though I live here in Raleigh, North Carolina, which makes working across the country a little bit interesting sometimes. Thanks, Reverend. In the time that I've been working, I've come across a lot of concerns, hurdles, obstacles that schools have had. So I'm not going to say I've heard everything, because I think that's a bit of a stretch, but I've heard a lot. And I think it's helped with helping schools now in a different role in a different way. That being said, let's go into the agenda. So today we're going to cover a bit about classes, on how to sync your classes with either a single sign-on or a manual rostering if your school doesn't do it that way. We will create a formative with a few different question types, as well as going over how to assign a formative and some of the options that are available to you in doing that. And then we'll look a little bit on viewing and acting on responses, so you can kind of get a detailed idea of what it looks like as students are working through the information that you'll get as a teacher, as well as a few tips and tricks on grading. Before we launch into it as well, I want to point out my colleague Katie is here in the chat as well. So if you have any questions at any point in time, you can just throw them in chat. If I'm in the middle of speaking, she'll be able to pick them up, and we'll kind of tag team everything as we go along the way. A couple things to know. First, this webinar is going to be recorded. It'll be available in our training center, which I'll show you at the end of the webinar. It'll be right around 30 minutes long. Might be able to squeeze a few extra minutes at the end, give you a couple minutes back. Depends on how many questions we have. We'll kind of have to see how that goes. And again, if you have any questions, just throw them in chat. We'll be happy to help. And with that, let's dive in. Change screens real quick. So once you sign into Formative with either your single sign-on, or the school ID, whatever you have, and whatever you use for your account, this is kind of the first screen that's going to come up. This is kind of the home screen of your dashboard, as we call it. Now over here, you'll see all the different formatives that we've created or that I've created. I've got some folders here to help organize too, and then the rest down here. Across the top, you'll see the various classrooms that I have as well. So when you're looking at your view, you'll see your formatives here on the left, and then your classrooms across the top. I want to point your attention up here to the top left where these tabs are: formatives, classes, tracker, library, and admin. Now today, we're really going to focus more on formatives and classes. If we have a couple of minutes, I can kind of show you a little bit about the tracker and the library. But for the most part, this is where we're going to be living. And for right now, let's start with classes. So here you see some that I've made, like a very creative name of Alex Fake One, very original, what can I say? And so you'll come here to look at your classes. Now, if you don't have any in there, that's okay. We're going to walk through how you would add them. Now, if you use Google for your school, Google Classroom and that kind of suite, you can just click the Google button here. It'll give you the sign in for your account, sign with your appropriate account. All your classrooms will be pulled from Google Classroom, and you can import them in. If you use Clever or Microsoft Teams instead, both buttons are there, work exactly the same way. Now, if you don't use that, that's okay. You can do it manually with the new class button. So we'll start here and walk you through it. So let's say I'm third grade. So I'll put Alex, third grade. Purple. I like color purple, so I'm gonna go with purple. We put an abbreviation, that way you kind of have a visual indicator of what the class is along that top row we're looking at. So we'll put A3 for grades, third grade, as we mentioned. Let's say French. I studied French a lot when I was younger, so I tried French. And then organization. So it looks a little different on my screen. For you, if you're in a classroom, you'd probably see like the building and then different departments and then your class. We'll go to Formative Academy because that's just kind of the default for us, and we create for all the classes. So Arlene, when you import them, you'll get your selection of the classrooms and you can pick which ones that you want to import. So it's not like an all or nothing. You can kind of choose which ones that you want to pull in that way. Good question though. So once you've done that manual setup of the classroom and you have it here, there's two different ways for your students to be added to it. You can either have them go to this link, app.formative.com/join, and they can enter in this code. Then it'll pull them directly into your classroom. That's if you want, kind of push it to the students. Now, if you have all their information in like a CSV or Google Sheets or an Excel document, then you can just import it all here. First name, last name, their username or email address, whatever you'd have them log in with, and then a password you can create for them. That way you can add the students in manually, and then it'll look the same as if you had imported it, which will look a bit like this here. So we see in this one, this is just like a stock one. All the teachers are up here at the top in bold. You can also see teacher here. And then below, you'll see all the different students. So here you can see when was the last time your students have logged into Formative? What email are they using? How many are they working through? If you need to support them, maybe you need to reset their password, you can select them here. Add into another class. And there's lots of options here, but just to keep it general and broad, to manage your classes, you just click on the class. All the students, teachers, and co-teachers will be listed right there. So now that we have some classes, we can start talking about some formatives. Hey, look at that. So I try to keep it a little organized. So I'm going to start here in training formatives, and we're going to hit new formative. You don't have to have a folder to start. That's just how I have it set up so I can keep it all organized. As soon as you click new formative, you'll be brought here. So to start, this is kind of the title that you're going to put the formative. Now, as I'm typing here, I want you to pay attention to the top right here at the top left. So we're going to call this webinar training formative. And I notice as soon as I stop typing, it refreshed there. So we are constantly auto-saving as you're working through the formative, so you don't have to worry about interruptions, general chaos that happens, technical difficulties, and then you losing all of your work. Pretty much as soon as you stop typing, it's going to save and update, and it'll keep your last progress to where you're working so you can pick up and keep going. So now that we have a title for this, let's start with some content. So this blue plus is going to be kind of like your guide for adding anything to the formative. So we'll start here. Now, when you start, formatives can go in a lot of different directions. There's a lot of flexibility. And so we kind of bring it down a little bit to make it a little easier for you. So to start, you can either begin with adding content. Let's say you're going to make a video and then attach questions to it or an image, or you can just start with questions, which sometimes can be easier. So for this, let's go with multiple choice. All right, so now we have our framework for multiple choice. So we'll type our question here, start with which of these are invertebrates. Should I spell that correctly? And then we will include some options. So let's start with cat, dog, lizard, and starfish. So we have the 4 answers. We'll pick what the correct one is, so starfish. And so then your students would see that push through. I'll get to that in just a second. Now, something that I recommend with multiple choice, I think anybody probably recommend, is to randomize the order. That way, when it's displayed to different students, they won't be in the same order every single time, just to keep these a little randomized and give you a little more variance there in students taking it. So with multiple choice, now we'll start with like a base one there, and let's kind of go into the next one. So we'll go to another question, and here, instead of just one of these, we were looking at content before. A third option, if you don't want to just kind of pull an image or make a question yourself, say you have a worksheet or you have another document that you want to use, well, you can import that directly into your formative as kind of the framework to base your questions off of. So we'll start that here. You can upload it just if it's saved on your computer, maybe have a document, you could take a picture, or I'm going to do pick from Google Drive because I have this on my Google Drive. Apparently I forgot to sign into it. So Okay, so I'm going to use this one here of Mickey Mouse, because who doesn't love Mickey Mouse? And we'll give that a second to upload. So this is a nice option in that you don't have to kind of manually create everything. You don't have to think of the questions, you don't have to type them all in or copy paste them. But if you have something like this, if you have a worksheet that you like to use, you can now kind of use it here and let formative be the input piece for this worksheet. So instead of you having to grade each one over and over, everything will be pulled in here and all of your data will be collected with all of your other formatives. So let's hit add image. So now we have this PDF here that we're going to be working off of with Mickey Mouse. And so now with this plus here, we're going to create questions relating to it within that same frame. So let's start first with, let's try this. We want to give them instructions, right? So they're not just looking at this and going, okay, what do I need to do? So instead of just typing it, we can mix it up a little bit, make it a little more creative and fun for them. So let's do an audio recording. So I'm going to click here and say, well, I'm going to allow my microphone. Let's try this again. Okay. Read the passage and answer the questions. And now it's going to take that recording, upload it, and add it to there so that now when students get to that question, they can play the instructions and listen to it and have a little more of a connection than just in text. I'm not going to play it because I hate hearing my own voice. I think a lot of people relate to that too, but it will play. So let's go ahead and attach some questions here. So something that's going to be kind of neat here is that we have this multiple choice question. So we can just click right here at the number and do multiple choice. And then that just lines up completely. You can put the question here if you want to add which year did Mickey Mouse appear in a short film. You wouldn't have to. If you'd rather just leave it blank, so it shows that it relates to that question. And then the correct answer would be 1928. Most click that there and it's done. Now, normally I would go through every single question, but in the interest of time, I'm going to skip down here to who is Mickey's girlfriend, because I want to show you something a little different than just multiple choice over and over. So let's do a short answer. Now, the question being, who is Mickey's girlfriend? We know it's Minnie. There's a lot of different ways to answer that, right? You could say Minnie, you could say Minnie Mouse. It is Minnie Mouse. Mickey's girlfriend's Minnie Mouse. Minnie Mouse is Mickey's girlfriend. There's a whole bunch of ways to do it. So in order for us to make sure that you're not going to have to check every single one, we can just put Minnie and we can allow partial match. So now if they answer with any of those before, they write a short story, they write the final Game of Thrones book, beat George R.R. Martin to the punch and do it all about Mickey and Minnie Mouse, whatever they want to do. As long as it has Minnie, it'll check it as correct and you can kind of keep going there. Now, on top of short answer and multiple choice, you've seen a lot of different options here. Let's look at a free response. So that way they can just freely express, any way that they want to. How are you feeling today? So then you get even more flexibility, multiple choice, short answer, free response. What is the case then, Josh? Oh, so it's a good question, Rolene. So let's say you put Minnie and you put case sensitive. So now they would have to capitalize it for it to be correct. It's kind of a choice like here with the proper, it's a good idea to have it on. But if, for instance, you were talking about something a little more abstract, maybe like a fruit or something, and the case isn't as important, you could leave that off, but that would just make it so that the capitalized M would be required for the correct answer. So I want to show you one more question type, because I really like this one. I think this one's pretty neat. Let's see, categorize the foods in their proper. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make one of them matching fruits and vegetables, categorizing them in the right parts. So we'll put fruits, and then here we'll put vegetables. Now, the past questions that I put were mostly text-based, right? So here we're going to start to get a little more creative and flex a little more creative juices. So for item one, let's say we're going to do a fruit. We'll click this plus and choose an array of options here. Images, emojis, audio, just in case maybe you want them to record an answer. Doesn't work in this one. So we'll do image, and let's go to apples. Hopefully I don't get too much of the computer company, but we'll see. Here we go. So you can type any, any kind of word here for a Google image search. It is safe for schools, so you don't have to worry about anything crazy popping up. So then now we can have apples, and we can have this picture of apples here, and we'll label it apples. For the second one, I don't know, let's do banana. I like bananas. We'll hit plus, image, and bananas. So while I'm doing this, what should we put as vegetables? Anyone have a favorite vegetable we want to throw in here just to make this a little more fun? Before I default to broccoli and carrots. As we've made these two here, to add more, we just click plus draggable item here. And so we'll add 2 more. We'll make it 4 total, just to keep it simple. Any vegetable suggestions? Let me stick with carrots, okay. So we'll do carrots, we'll do plus an image, and we will search for carrots. There's some pretty nice pictures of carrots too. I never thought I'd be saying those are some beautiful carrots, but those are some beautiful carrots, right? And then finally, broccoli it is. And if you had your own picture of broccoli in this case that you wanted to use, you could upload that as well, Google Drive, saved on your computer, what have you. I like that one. High res broccoli, what we all need on a Thursday morning. So now that we have the options here for categorizing, to create the answer key, you just use the draggable option here and drag it to the proper category. So we'll put fruits, and then we'll put vegetables. Now, I would say in this one, it'd probably be a good idea to randomize order. I don't think it'd be a good way to do it to have both the fruits and both the vegetables together, but mix it up a little bit just to get a little more thought going in there. And then that question is complete. So now we have 5 questions in this formative. And in going through this, now that we have it completed, you might be thinking, well, how do I know what it looks like to a student? Like, I know what it looks like for me here as you're working through it, but you might want to double check. I want to go back and forth. What does it look like for me? What does it look like for them? And that's where you can click this eye right here, and you'll be able to preview it as a student. Now, right, it defaults kind of to begin with what it looks like on a computer, but you can change it to a tablet, and it'll pop up here, or you can change it to how it looks on mobile, whichever you prefer, however you think they're taking the formative. So we'll stick to computer just to make it easier to present. And so we can go through here. Which of these are invertebrates? It's going to be a starfish. Which year did Mickey Mouse first appear in a short film? Coincides with the question here. C. We didn't put the question here for 3, but they can look here and see the blue 3. There's Mickey's girlfriend. They can answer it. You know, Minnie, as we said. How you feeling today? I feel great. And then you could see the categorize that we had before. Drag the broccoli to vegetables, drag the apples to fruits, so on and so forth. And so that way you can kind of experience it from a student perspective before you push it out to your students, just so you can make sure it's working exactly the way that you want it to work. Now, in addition to being able to preview it here, back in this same screen of the formative, we'll look at assigning. So once you've made it, you want to assign it to your students, right? So from here, there's a good amount of options for you to work with. We'll pick the 3rd grade class that I had before. Actually, no, I'm going to show you this one for a few options. That'll make a little more sense. You'll see down here, the first thing that pops up is teacher paste mode. And so what this is a way for you to deliver your formative in a way that you have more control over. So instead of just the equivalent is handing the worksheet and they just work through it at their own pace, this way you can kind of pace it by the questions the way you want it to go. You can, in the previous example, you can give the invertebrate question. You can watch all the students work through it. Once they're completed, or it's been however much time you wanted to allot to that question, you can then push to the next question with the Mickey Mouse example. They can work through there, and then you could push on to the free response with how are you feeling today, or any other way that you want to do it, by time, by pace. The teacher pace mode is what's going to give you that option to do that. In optional settings here, you have a decent amount of control here as well. I'll try to keep it brief. Restrict to individual students, I think, will be a big one. This way you can just assign it to specific students, maybe for IEPs, intervention pieces, and targeted instruction, whatever reason may be, you can do it there. You can schedule open and close times as well as time limits. So let's say it's open for 3 hours on Friday, or you need to take it Friday. So you do 12:01 to midnight on Friday, and you get 2 hours to take it. So when it opens, it's a 2-hour time. With these three, after submission, return scores, and return correct answers, this gives you control of the post-formative experience. So what is the student seeing after they've submitted? Can they see their answers? Can they see if they're correct or incorrect? Can they edit their submissions after they've input and submitted? Can they not edit? All up to you. And all just kind of depends on what you're trying to do with the formative itself. And finally, you can display the questions in random order if you would like. Again, all up to you and the controls you want. I'll point out too, if you did sync with Google, when you go to sign, you can assign and post to Google with this button, and that way it'll push it to your Google Classroom and your students can take it there. I'm going to stop because I've gone through a lot of information. Any questions so far? Threw a lot at you in a relatively short amount of time. So, Ravleen, you've had a lot of questions. That's great. Thank you. But if anyone else is curious about anything, I'd be happy to show you before we hop into some data stuff. Can we import questions from Google Forms? Let's see. Katie, have you come across that yet? It's not something I've come across yet.
You cannot import from Google Forms. What you can do is you can copy the actual text from Google Forms and create a new question in Formative.
There you go. It's not yet, but a copy paste and you'll be able to do it too. Something to show you here, like let's say you wanted to just create multiple choice questions. After you make the first one, you could click the dots and just copy it and it will just create another one. So let's say you're going to make 5 multiple choice. You make the first one, leave it blank, copy 5 times, and then you can adjust them as you need. Go ahead and delete that one. Any other questions before we hop? Oh, can we copy paste this formative link in Google Classroom? When you assign and you do this, it would push it to Google Classroom anyway. If you do it with assign and post to Google. So you could put the link in there, but when you do it here, it's going to push it anyway, and it will pop up in their Google Classroom feed. Does that answer that for you, Ravleen? All right, so let's dive into data. I'm actually going to switch to a different formative because it's going to have a little more for you to look through. So we're looking at this one here. It's 4 questions about plane figures and 3D shapes. And so what I want you to see here is you can see what the student responses were as they were answering the different questions. You can see who got them correct, which ones were incorrect. You can see kind of the percentages. And also there's this little icon here that you see on this correct window. That lets you know, it's an indicator that there's a comment from the student there, or there's a comment period. So you can look into the individual questions and you can see how the students have answered these questions. You can see what they categorize, what did they fill in if it's text-based, what are the multiple choice questions or multiple choice answers. And let's say when we're looking through here, you see some that are kind of right. Like they got half of it out of, there's like 4 options here. We can do something called batch grading. So let's say there's 5 of them. We'll use these 2 as an example, and they got half of it right. And it automatically gave them 0 points, and you want to give them half credit. So you can actually select them here with the dots beside their name. And then up here in this drag, let's say it was actually half. You can just set it to half credit, and it will mark all of them to that grade level. We call this batch grading. So then there, let's say you see 6 of them, and mostly you can select them and adjust the grade instead of having to go through each one by one individually and keep up with that in your data. Also indicated, let me go back here, that chat we were talking about, that comment. So you click here, and then at the bottom, we have one from Miss Ostral from a couple months ago. But you could send a message here as well. So you could say the same thing, nice job. Or you can have a back and forth with your student there. You can kind of maintain some of that connection that could have been lost with some of the distance that's been going on. And also just kind of give them that pat on the back that maybe they need if they're working through something that you know they've been struggling with. All right, now the last I wanted to point out, I had mentioned before about the training center. Whoop, there we go. The training center where this was going to be uploaded at the end of the webinar. It's going to be right over here under this chat bubble. There is Help Center. So if we click here, the Help Center is kind of your go-to spot when you have questions, when you're like, I can't figure this out. I want to know how to do this. You can type it in here and there's a ton of articles, lots of information, lots of forms and papers on ways to help in exactly what you're looking for. And if you can't find it here for any reason, go back. Then there's also the handy contact formative support button where someone like Katie or myself will be there to help with any issues that you may have and help walk you through them. Thank you all for coming today. I appreciate your time being here to take time to learn more about formative and what you can do to help transform the lives of your students. Hope you all have a great rest of your day and hopefully a good weekend coming up too, right? So thank you so much. Bye-bye now.